You're doing this wrong if you think silence means it's over. Research from the University of California shows that 73% of avoidant attachers experience their deepest emotional processing only after complete communication breaks. I see this with my clients every day. They come to me confused, wondering why the silence feels so heavy when they both chose it. By the end, you'll understand exactly what happens next, because this silence forces truths neither of you were ready to face. It starts with silence, not the dramatic kind with slammed doors. The quiet kind where your phone just stops lighting up, no more good morning texts. The push-pull cycle finally collapses into nothingness, and at first, you think this is closure. But for both you and the avoidant, this isn't the finish line. It's the starting gun. When an avoidant stops contacting you, it's about control. They believe staying distant helps them avoid vulnerability and rejection. Every avoidant learned early that needing someone meant getting hurt. Maybe their parent was inconsistent. Maybe they were left to cry alone as a baby. So now they control the distance to control the pain. But when you stop contacting them too, something in their armor begins to crack. At first, they feel relieved. Finally, no pressure. For 3 to 7 days, they feel lighter. They throw themselves into work, go out with friends, maybe download a dating app. They tell themselves this is freedom. But as days pass, that relief transforms. They notice your name isn't lighting up their phone anymore. The silence they use to protect themselves starts echoing back. By day 10, they're checking their phone more often, wondering why you're not reaching out. When you used to reach out, it served 2 purposes. Yes, it made them feel suffocated, but it also reinforced their security. They knew you'd always come back. They had the luxury of pulling away because you were holding the rope. But when you stop too, the power dynamic shifts. They're not the one being chased anymore. They're just alone. You go through your own emotions. At first, you miss them badly. Your fingers hover over their contact. You write messages you don't send. You check their social media looking for signs. The habit of reaching out is still strong. Your body craves a dopamine hit of their response. But then something changes. After 2 weeks, a strange calm takes its place. You notice how you're not constantly anxious anymore. How much mental energy you use to spend decoding their mixed signals. You realize how much emotional energy you poured into maintaining something that wasn't mutual. The silence that felt like punishment now feels like protection. Peace. Relief. You begin to reclaim yourself. You remember who you were before them. You pick up old hobbies. You call friends you've been neglecting. You realize you've been living in the spaces between their attention. The avoidant notices this energetic shift even without contact. Avoidants are hyper-vigilant about abandonment, even though they act like they don't care. They constantly scan for signs that someone is leaving, even while pushing them away. That emotional cord they tugged at for validation suddenly feels weaker. Maybe they notice you haven't watched their stories. Maybe a friend mentions you seem really good lately. Maybe they just feel it. That shift when someone focused on you suddenly isn't anymore. That triggers something deep. Fear. The fear of being forgotten. The fear that they pushed away something real. At this stage, they test the waters indirectly. They view your stories but don't respond. They like a photo from 3 weeks ago at 2 a.m. They send a random meme or text something practical. These aren't real attempts at connection. They're temperature checks asking, are you still there? Do you still care? But here's the paradox. If you respond too quickly, they retreat again. Your availability confirms their safety, and once safe, they remember why they left. But if you stay detached or keep it brief, they spiral. Why aren't they happy to hear from me? Have they moved on? Time becomes the great revealer. After weeks or months of no contact, both of you see yourselves with more clarity. You see how much you were driven by emotional need, the need to fix, to prove your worth, to earn love from someone never fully open. You were filling a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You start recognizing your own patterns. Maybe you chose them because unavailable people feel familiar. Maybe their distance triggered your childhood wound. Maybe you confuse anxiety with passion. The silence gives you space to see these truths. The avoidant feels the way of their own defenses. Without you there to push against, They have no one to blame for their loneliness. The quiet forces them to sit with feelings they've avoided. They experience what therapists call deactivation regret, realizing they push away something good because of fear. Loneliness hits them differently. For you, loneliness is missing them specifically. For them, it's realizing they do this with everyone. They see how they've ended every relationship the same way, how they're still alone not because no one wanted them, but because they couldn't let anyone in. Months later, the avoidant may reappear. Hey, how have you been? Text at 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday. A comment on your social media after months of silence. They show up where they know you'll be. It's never about small talk. It's testing if the door is still open. What triggers their return? First, they hit rock bottom with their avoidance. Maybe someone new calls them out on the same patterns. Maybe they're alone on a holiday and realize this loneliness is self-inflicted. Second, they see you genuinely happy without them. That terrifies them because you're not waiting anymore. Third, enough time has passed that they've forgotten the discomfort and only remember the good parts. If you respond from your healed space, you notice something different. Their charm doesn't hook you the same way. What used to make your heart race now just sounds like words. Their distance no longer feels mysterious. It feels predictable. You've studied this dance 100 times. You see their patterns clearly. The breadcrumbing, the hot and cold, the way they come back just close enough to make sure you still care, but not close enough to actually commit. You understand that love cannot bloom where fear still rules. This isn't about you not being enough. It's about them not being ready. Here's the twist most people don't expect. When you finally stop reaching out, not as a tactic, not as a game, but as natural self-respect, that's when the avoidant feels your absence most deeply. Your silence becomes louder than any message. They can handle you being angry. Anger means you care. They can handle sadness. Sadness means they affect you. But your indifference, your genuine peace without them, that shakes their foundation. It means they actually lost you. Not the idea of you, but the real you who once looked at them like they hung the moon. In some cases, this silence becomes a mirror that wakes them up. They confront their own attachment wounds. They question why intimacy feels like suffocation. Some go to therapy. Some do the hard work of understanding that their parents' inability to attune to their needs created this protective shell. Your silence becomes a catalyst for their growth, but you're not there to see it, and that's exactly how it should be. For others, they double down on avoidance. They convince themselves you weren't that important. They dive into work, distractions, or new relationships to avoid the void. They tell friends a version where they're the victim. But that emptiness always catches up, maybe not in 6 months or a year, but eventually it hits them. So when you both stop contacting each other, what happens next isn't about who breaks the silence first. It's about who grows through it. For you, it's the awakening of your self-worth, understanding that you deserve someone who doesn't make you feel crazy for wanting consistency, someone who doesn't need to lose you to realize your value. The moment you stop obsessing over their absence and start filling your own life with presence, you win. Not competitively, but soulfully. You reclaim the energy you were given to someone who couldn't hold it. You redirect that love toward yourself and people who can receive it. If you're in that quiet space now, wondering what happens next, remember this. Silence doesn't destroy connections. It reveals which ones were strong enough to survive without chasing. It shows who wants to be in your life versus who just wants you available. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let the silence speak the truth you both need to hear.